Have you ever felt like your dreams were slipping away? Like you were stuck in a situation with no way out, no light at the end of the tunnel? Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible comeback stories ever told, a tale of betrayal, resilience, and a destiny that could not be denied. This is the story of Joseph, a young dreamer who went from being a prisoner in a foreign land to the second most powerful man in the world. Our story begins with a young man named Joseph, the 11th of 12 sons. He wasn't just any son, he was his father Jacob's favorite, and everyone knew it. To show his affection, Jacob gave Joseph a stunning, multicolored coat. This coat wasn't just a piece of clothing, it was a symbol of favor, a mark that set him apart. And if that wasn't enough to stir up some sibling rivalry, Joseph also had dreams. Not just ordinary dreams, but vivid, prophetic visions where his brothers and even his parents bowed down to him. He shared these dreams, perhaps a little too eagerly, and his brothers' jealousy turned into outright hatred. They saw him as arrogant, a spoiled dreamer who thought he was better than them. They couldn't stand the sight of him or his fancy coat. That simmering resentment was about to boil over. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers who were tending the flocks far from home. As they saw him approaching in the distance, a dark plan formed. "Here comes the dreamer," they sneered. Their initial thought was grim, but one brother, Reuben, suggested a less permanent solution. Let's throw him into this empty cistern here in the wilderness. He secretly planned to come back later and rescue Joseph. So, they stripped him of his beloved coat, the very symbol of his father's love, and cast him into a deep, dark pit. Imagine the terror, the confusion, the feeling of utter betrayal. The very people who should have protected him had turned against him. But the story takes another turn. While Reuben was away, another brother, Judah, had an idea. What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. And so, for 20 pieces of silver, Joseph was sold into slavery. His brothers then took his beautiful coat, dipped it in goat's blood, and presented it to their devastated father, letting him believe a wild animal had killed his favorite son. Jacob was plunged into a grief so deep it would last for decades. Meanwhile, Joseph was taken down to Egypt, a world away from everything he knew. He was sold again, this time to a high-ranking official named Potiphar, the captain of Pharaoh's guard. Here, despite his circumstances, Joseph's true character began to shine. He didn't wallow in despair or curse his fate. Instead, he worked diligently and honestly. The Bible tells us that the Lord was with Joseph, and everything he did prospered. Potiphar saw this exceptional young man and soon put him in charge of his entire household. From a slave, Joseph rose to become the master of the estate. It seemed like his fortunes were finally turning. But his trials were far from over. Joseph was handsome, and Potiphar's wife took notice. She repeatedly tried to seduce him, but Joseph, driven by his integrity and his loyalty to both Potiphar and God, refused her. "How could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" he said. One day, she became more aggressive, grabbing his cloak as he tried to flee from her room. Left holding his garment, she was filled with rage and scorn. She falsely accused Joseph, claiming he had attacked her. Potiphar, enraged by this betrayal, threw Joseph into the royal prison, the very place where the king's prisoners were held. Once again, Joseph was plunged into darkness, his hopes dashed. He was innocent, yet he was a convict. He had done the right thing, and it had cost him his freedom. It would have been so easy to give up, to become bitter and resentful. But that wasn't Joseph's way. Even in the squalor of the prison, his spirit remained unbroken. The prison warden saw the same qualities Potiphar had seen. He saw Joseph's competence, his integrity, and that same unexplainable favor that seemed to follow him. Soon, Joseph was put in charge of all the other prisoners. He went from being a prisoner to running the prison. He was still captive, but he was leading. His unique gift for interpreting dreams would soon reappear. Two of Pharaoh's officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, were thrown into prison with him. One night, They both had troubling dreams and were distraught. Joseph, showing compassion, asked them what was wrong. They told him their dreams, and with divine insight, Joseph interpreted them. He told the cupbearer that in 3 days, he would be restored to his position, serving Pharaoh once again. To the baker, he delivered a grim forecast: in 3 days, he would be executed. Joseph had one simple request for the cupbearer: when all goes well with you, remember me, and show me kindness, mention me to Pharaoh, and get me out of this prison. Just as Joseph predicted, 3 days later, the cupbearer was restored, and the baker was executed. But in his newfound freedom and comfort, the cupbearer forgot. He forgot the young Hebrew man who had given him hope in the darkness. 2 more years passed. 2 more years for Joseph, languishing in prison, his hopes for freedom seemingly forgotten. Imagine the patience, the sheer mental fortitude it took to wait, day after day, for a promise that never seemed to come. Then, everything changed. Pharaoh, the most powerful man in Egypt, began having dreams that no one could interpret. He dreamt of 7 fat, healthy cows coming out of the Nile, followed by 7 gaunt, ugly cows that ate the healthy ones. Then he dreamt of 7 full heads of grain, swallowed up by 7 thin, blighted heads. These dreams deeply troubled him, and all the magicians and wise men of Egypt were stumped. It was then that the cupbearer finally remembered. "Today I am reminded of my shortcomings," he said to Pharaoh. "There was a young Hebrew man in prison with me, a servant of the captain of the guard. He interpreted our dreams for us, and everything happened just as he said." Immediately, Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought out of the dungeon, shaved, and given clean clothes. Standing before the mighty ruler of Egypt, Joseph was not intimidated. When Pharaoh said, "I hear you can interpret dreams," Joseph's reply was full of humility and faith: "I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Pharaoh recounted his dreams, and Joseph, guided by God, laid out their meaning. The 7 healthy cows and full heads of grain represented 7 years of great abundance throughout Egypt. The 7 gaunt cows and thin heads of grain represented 7 years of devastating famine that would follow, so severe it would consume all the abundance. But Joseph didn't stop there. He went from dream interpreter to crisis manager. He advised Pharaoh to find a discerning and wise man and put him in charge of the land. This man should appoint commissioners to collect 1/5 of the harvest during the 7 years of plenty and store it in cities as a reserve against the 7 years of famine. Pharaoh and his officials were astounded by this wisdom. Pharaoh looked at his court and said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then, turning to Joseph, he declared, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." In that single moment, Joseph's life was transformed. Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. Joseph, the 30-year-old who woke up a prisoner, went to sleep as the prime minister of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh. He was given a new Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and an Egyptian wife, Asenath. For the next 7 years, Joseph skillfully managed the collection and storage of grain. The abundance was so great they stopped keeping records. Then, as predicted, the famine hit. It wasn't just in Egypt, it spread over the whole face of the earth. But thanks to Joseph's foresight, Egypt had food. People from all over the world came to Egypt to buy grain from him. And one day, a group of 10 men came from the land of Canaan. They bowed down before this powerful Egyptian ruler, their faces to the ground. They didn't recognize him, but Joseph knew exactly who they were. They were his brothers. His dream from all those years ago had come true. Joseph's story is a powerful reminder that our current circumstances do not define our future. He endured betrayal, slavery, and false imprisonment, yet he never lost his integrity or his faith. He shows us that even in the darkest pits, with the right character and a resilient spirit, we can rise. Destiny has a way of finding those who are prepared for it. So, if you're feeling stuck, remember Joseph. Your breakthrough could be just one dream away. Thank you so much for watching. If this story inspired you, please hit that like button, subscribe for more powerful stories, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. We'll see you in the next one.